Hello everyone and welcome to the very first webinar for Veema of 2018. So I'm really excited to be here and presenting this. Usually we would have our director Costa here, but he's put me in charge of making sure that you get all of the information you need. So make sure that you follow us on Twitter at Veema Edu. You can see the details there at the bottom of the screen. And also there's a lot of information on the Veema website as well. So www.veema.co.uk. So if you're interested in following up anything that you've heard as part of this webinar, then I'm sure that you'll be able to find the information there. So today's webinar is all about communication, and it's communication to help excellent behaviour in the classroom. You can see I've put a copy there of something I'm really excited about, is my new book, Teacher in the Cupboard. And Teacher in the Cupboard is all about educational problem solving. So again, if you're really interested in any of the ideas, I'm sure that there'll be ideas within there. So we're going to start with the session outcomes. So the things that we're hoping to achieve within this session are making sure that we have better communication skills, thinking about how we might be better able to deliver our content. I want you to be thinking about yourself throughout this and about how you communicate. So lots of self-reflection, and fingers crossed there's going to be a lot of ideas that you can take away, take back to school, try out tomorrow when you get there. So let's get started. To begin with, I want us to think about this idea. Now, this idea is by a great doctor, but this idea has also been debunked. Debunked in that the percentages that you're seeing on your screen right now are not quite right. There's a lot more research gone on into this, and because the research is going on, I haven't put the new research up there. However, I do think there is a lot to be said about this. So communication is a small amount about the words that we actually say. It's more about how we say it and what's going on with our face and our hands and our body when we're actually saying it. So with this in mind, I want you to have a look at the next screen and I want you to tell me something. So you should be seeing my youngest son, Sam, now. I want you to look at his face. I want you to tell me how you think Sam is feeling. If you are saying angry, that is what people typically say when they see this picture. Now I'm going to tell you the thinking behind this picture, because this was a real situation that took place. Look at Sam's face. You can see that his eyebrows are turned down. You can see that his chin is against his chest like this, and he's almost looking up at you like a cobra ready to attack. Now, Sam's dad is the more, let's say he's the disciplinarian out of the two of us. And Sam's dad had been disciplining him at this moment. I don't know if you've heard of the naughty step, but the naughty step is where you get put when you've done something wrong, and you're supposed to sit there for the amount of years of your life. Then at the end, you're supposed to say that you're sorry, explain why you're sorry, and then we move on. This is what would happen in a normal situation. This is Sam telling us that he is sorry. Now look at that face. Tell me, does that face say sorry to you? Because it didn't say sorry to Tony, Sam's dad, because he was looking at Tony saying, "I'm really sorry," and he got put back on the step. And the next time he was allowed off to explain that he was sorry, he said, "I'm really sorry," and he got put back on the step. Now he ended up on that step for a long time before he learned that sorry should come out more like, "I'm really sorry, Dad, for the things that I've done." So Sam's still learning. Sam was only about 6 when this photograph was taken. And I just want you to have a look at it. This was exactly the same day. Look again at the second picture. How do you think Sam's feeling now? Because if you look in the eyes, you can see that he wasn't feeling the way he was telling me he was feeling. In his eyes, we can see sparkles, and I know that that's happiness. But Sam was telling me in this moment that he was really, really sad. You see, for every single day that Sam had the naughty step, every single moment that Sam had the naughty step, he was actually losing his PlayStation for a day. Me being the seemingly weaker parent, Sam was coming to me, looking in my eyes, telling me he was so unbelievably sad and that he needed his PlayStation back. Now, he was trying to manipulate with me with his face. I want us to think about, right, this is a situation that might happen with a 6-year-old, but I want us to think about this situation and think about the range of emotions that you might feel in your daily job as a teacher. So think about the frustration, the anger, the annoyance of things that might happen in the classroom. And I want you to think about how the children are seeing you, because as human beings, we are observing each other all of the time. Back to that, how you say it, and back to that, the way that you are communicating with other people. And we are responsible for the energy that we bring into a classroom. Now, if we're feeling annoyed about something that happened outside of the classroom and we're just greeting our students for the first time in that day, and we're not in control of what our face is doing, what our hands are doing, how we're communicating with those students, then those students will see how we feel inside. So part of teaching really and being in control in the classroom is, maybe you could say it's acting, but I think it's about being in control of your emotions. So something that I practice, and this is a mantra that I use every single day: no emotional response. When students are late into the classroom, it might irritate me, and so I'll have to repeat the mantra: no emotional response. When students are being badly behaved, looking for my attention, I might be thinking no emotional response. So that gives me the chance to calm down inside, so that what they see is somebody who is fully in control of that situation, somebody that knows exactly what they're doing. And believe me, if you're feeling heightened emotions in a moment, then, I mean, for me as a parent, when I'm feeling heightened emotions, sometimes the things that I say out loud are not helpful in the situation. So I might be, you're banned from this, you're not doing this for a whole year, blah, 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 blah. That's not being in control of the situation. So in the classroom, how are you going to keep control of your emotions and make sure that what you communicate to the students is calm, is in control, and you know exactly what you're doing? Now, here's a little task to get us started on thinking about the outcomes that you want to get out of this. This is something that I do to solve any problem, and I call it the worst to the best ladder. What I start with is I think about the behaviours that are driving me crazy, or the behaviours that are actually stopping learning from happening. What are the things that are a barrier to learning in my classroom? So you can see on one side, you write down all of the things that are actually happening, the things that you don't want to happen. Look at my examples here. We've got incessant talking, mobile phones out, being late. These things stop learning from happening. And I put all of those things on one side. And then I'll think about the opposite. So for each negative, on the other side, we have an opposite. So mobile phones out, controlling their use of a mobile phone. Incessant talking in the right situation, because we don't want students who don't speak to us. We want students who are confident in speaking to us, but we want them to be speaking about the right thing at the right time. So this worst best situation gets everything out on the table. So you could try this after the seminar. Think about the things that are stopping learning from happening in the classroom. Identify what those things actually are, and then think about the exact opposite for each of those things. The reason why we create the exact opposite of each of those things is because that's our target, that's our aim. If we just leave it like that, then we're actually in exactly the same place as we started. What we need to do is do something about it. And this is why I call it the ladder, because it's the things that you actually put in place to get from one side to the other. So for example, some of the things that I've done to solve poor behaviour in the classroom: rewarding excellent behaviour. I look for the students who are doing exactly what I want them to do, and I make a really big deal out of what those students are doing. So I'm communicating to the rest of the class that attention is given to excellent behaviours. So for example, if somebody is asking questions about a task and they're really interesting questions that will help them to find the right answer, I'll say, they're excellent questions. You're a really great question. Can you hear this example here of questioning is absolutely fantastic. And the students in the class know that I'm rewarding good behaviour by identifying it and giving praise to that student. Another example might be that a student's really focused and on task. Again, speak to that student, making sure that I'm showing the rest of the students what I expect. If you think about the opposite of that, not identifying the good behaviours, but what can often happen to us in the classroom is identifying the bad behaviours, because that's what we're trying to control. Maybe it doesn't feel like you are rewarding bad behaviour if you are pointing it out, but the students see that that student is getting attention for that bad behaviour. And if anything, you're creating for them a reputation, and it's a reputation that they will live up to. So the student who is always late, you are always late, I know. The student who is always off task, why are you never on task? Because I'm getting your attention for being off task. It's not always easy to ignore bad behaviours. And when I say ignore bad behaviours, I don't mean allow them to go unnoticed. I mean, make sure that your attention is on the positive. Make sure that your attention is on the behaviour that you want to see. The bad behaviour should be dealt with, but not publicly. The bad behaviour should be dealt with in private. So reward the good, praise in public, reprimand in private, and be really clear on the rules that you set out so that students know exactly how to behave in your classroom. So that's the ladder. There are many more ideas to getting on the ladder, but we only have 50 minutes together, and my slide seems to be wanting to jump forward really quickly, so we'll move on. Okay, so this is the problem solving method. Now I'm going to talk about a problem that I see very often in teachers. And this problem is called self-blindness. Now we've got listeners from all over the world today, so I hope my Northern English accent is translating well. The good thing about having a seminar online is you can slow it down, you can re-watch it again, but fingers crossed my communication is coming over to you. Self-blindness, I have got an example here from the UK, and that example is Lord Sugar. And Lord Sugar, trying to jump forward again, Lord Sugar is dealing with one of his apprentices. Now, I want you just to have a look at what's going on inside their minds and outside their minds. It'll slow down. Okay, so he won't see the fear in my eyes. I'm bringing it, but he'll never know. Her hard eyes don't fool me. I saw her shaking hands before she hid them under the table. Notice that we're always looking at each other and we're always deducing what's happening behind somebody's eyes, whether we realise that's what the person's thinking or not. So that's what's happening inside their minds. Who do you think is responsible for the failure of this task? You can see that's out loud. I'm putting the accent on now. Brilliant, right? Who do you think is responsible for the failure of this task? Inside her mind, she's thinking, me, I am. But out loud, she says, not me, Dan. He didn't sell anything and was utterly useless at everything. I made all the decisions. Inside his mind, who's she trying to kid? Too quick to defend herself, and the volume in that voice speaks volumes. I'll show her how impressive I am with a witty one-liner. Now, if you don't know who Alan Sugar is famous for his witty one-liners. He delivers them and he makes sure that people know exactly how he feels about them. He's quite cruel in his delivery, so here's his witty one-liner out loud. All I've heard from you so far is a lot of hot air. So in the interest of climate change, you're fired. Hee, I'm so funny. Everyone loves me. Cue the groveling response. You can see how he feels about himself inside of his mind. But his apprentice, who he's just delivered that line to, out loud gives him exactly what he wants. Thank you, Lord Sugar, for this amazing opportunity. I hope we meet again soon. Inside her mind, however, is a slightly different story. This is an example of self-blindness, not being able to see how you are affecting others. Now, I've seen self-blindness in many different forms. My role is really what I do is I'm an educational problem solver, but that takes place all over, and it goes from being in school as a consultant to being a supply teacher to being in charge of departments. And I've seen many people having this issue with self-blindness where they feel like their power over people is respect. And their power over people actually creates fear sometimes, or actually a lack of respect. So being able to reflect upon how you are perceived in your role, whether that's as an NQT and eventually NQTs who are listening, you will be in different roles as leaders, as managers, as maybe even head teachers one day. And it's important, no matter which step on the ladder you are, that you are able to reflect upon yourself. A great way of doing this is to be in a group work situation and really stop and think about what's happening in that situation. So the next time you are in a staff meeting, or the next time you are discussing ideas with a group of people, or even if you're playing a board game with your family, you can use these questions to reflect upon yourself. So ask yourself, how do other people see you? What do they actually see? How often are you the one talking in a situation? People are often shocked when they see me in a CPD session that's not being run by me, because I'm not very often the one talking, and people always expect that I am. That's probably because people see me as somebody who thinks they have all the answers. So that's something that I need to address. I need to think about how that comes across. Do you talk over people? So often when we're listening, what happens when we listen is the information comes in of what's being said, and we look in our long-term memory to make sense of the information that's coming in. And as we're looking in our long-term memory, what that makes us do is that makes us say, me, 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 me. So when somebody says something to you, your mind instantly pings to what you want to say about that. And this is not an easy thing to do, but the way to truly listen to somebody is to empty your mind, be present, and actually listen to the words that they're saying. It's important when you do this to make sure that you're back channeling. So if you just listen to somebody, your mind is empty and you're like staring blankly at them, that's not okay. That's weird. So what you need to do is back channeling. And back channeling is when you are nodding, it's eye contact, it's yeah, agreeing. Not because you feel like you've got to say, yeah, yeah, because I have actually seen people do that in conversation and you can see that they're not listening. It's when you do agree with them, thinking about what they've said. Asking questions about what they've said as well shows that you are trying to understand what they're saying rather than trying to get your point across. So that's a really important one when it comes to communication. I'm asking you to reflect upon yourself here, but listening to students in exactly the same way by emptying your mind, being present and listening to the words students say can really strengthen the relationships that you have with those students. They feel listened to, they are communicating effectively with you. You will be able to understand more of what's going on inside of their mind and be able to adjust your teaching accordingly. So maybe getting the right level for them. So that empty your mind, be present and listen is a really, really important skill to learn in teaching. What's your natural role in the group? You may be a leader, you may be a worker, but think about what is your natural role in the group? Could you improve? Could you try out different roles? And this is another important one as well. Are you the example you want them to be? Now, Lord Sugar, we just looked at, is a businessman, and I'm sure that he wants his apprentices to grow into great businessmen. So maybe he is the example of somebody who's in charge, a boss who shouts down to his younger people. But if you as a teacher want your students to behave like that, to give sarcasm to you, to not listen to you, to want to empty their minds, then fine, you can behave in that way. But I think as a teacher, we have to be the role model of communication. So we have to show them what we expect. In a classroom, not shouting, because if you shout, you may get silence. You may get silence, but will you get respect? Communicating effectively, listening to each other, making sure that your instructions are clear. So making sure that you are continually reflecting on how you are perceived, and remember that you're being observed every single day by the students in the classroom. Those students are looking at you, observing how you feel, observing how you think, and they can see a lot more than they might let you know. So keep that in mind. This is just a nice little thing that I like to use, the participation pie chart. The participation pie chart is just something that students can use to think about how they might interact in groups. And it's something that you use to just say, how much did you take part? The perfect participation pie chart is one that has absolutely equal for every single member of the group. So the student who absolutely takes over and wants to fill in the whole participation pie chart, you can have a conversation with that student about how they might give more to the rest of the group. The person who does not take part and does a tiny little sliver, that person can be thinking about how they can increase their participation. So it's a nice one for communication as well. Okay, now I'm going to give you just a moment to have a look over these key spoken language terms, because the great thing about going live is, you know, things are going to go wrong. My computer's going to switch off if I don't plug this in. So key spoken language terms, we're going to have a look at these in a moment. And the key spoken language terms that you can see there are hesitation, and that's an overly long pause. There you go, look, fixed it. Overly long pause with no effect. So that's not a hesitation, that was a pause for effect. A hesitation, if you use hesitation when you're speaking to the students, they may see that as you do not know what you're talking about. You don't know what the next words are about to come out of your mouth. So that can make you seem unsure. The next one, adjacency pairs, it's an expected response. Good morning, good morning. The way that you learn this from a very young age. So even before we can speak, people are saying good morning to us as little ones, and then we learn to speak and we learn the expected responses. Ellipsis, elision and contraction are all ways of using language. Usually we see these in informal situations, and especially with young people. Young people like to create their own way of speaking, I think, and the ellipsis, elision and contraction you might see with young people. So going to the shops, are you going to the shops is the full sentence. Slurring together of words, shut up instead of shut up. Shortening of words, yama should be your mother. All right, so this could make us appear as if we are uneducated, perhaps, because it's a really informal way of speaking. Imagine if you turned up for a job interview and you spoke in this way. But sometimes our students turn up to our lessons and they speak in this way. This is another key spoken language term, power positions, thinking about who is in charge of the conversation. So this is really important when it comes to teaching, because we want ourselves to be in control of the conversation, hopefully, but we have to allow sometimes for the students to take control. Now I'm going to show you a short clip in a moment, if it works, because my technology has been running wild here, right? If it works, the short video should show you power positions being swapped from teacher to pupil and back again. And I want you to pay attention to how it changes, because if we can recognize this happening, you're about to watch a comedy, and it's funny when you watch it in a comedy, but when it happens in real life, we have to know ways of taking control again of that behavior and making sure that we are confidently in control. Filler is something that I do use quite often, but if I overused fillers, again, like hesitation, it would make me feel like I don't know what I'm about to say. Hedging, again, is a less powerful way of speaking, so I think maybe it could be hedging makes things have less power. So if we want to give an instruction and we say, I think you should do this, the students are less likely to take that as a command. So hedging, fillers, power positions, all of these things, key spoken language terms that I think if we observe ourselves as teachers, then we can recognize when we're using these, and we can think about how we might improve ourselves. But have a look at this teacher first. So if I click this, it should play.
In preparation for next week's exam, I think it's best we do a little test on the periodic table of elements. Lauren. 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 Grice, Lauren.
Alright.
What on earth do you think you're doing? You were talking to Ryan and Lise.
They're my brethren though, innit?
Whilst I was speaking.
Son,
If you've got something to say, Lauren, why don't you tell the whole class?
I ain't chatting to this crew.
Well, then perhaps you better complete this little test on your own. See if you like speaking to the whole class after that.
Whatever.
Okay, right. I'm going to point out some of these symbols on this table, and you're going to tell me what they represent. And if you don't complete this test with 100% correct answers, I'm going to put you on detention.
Is it?
Yes, it is. ZN. What's that for? Correct. What about CA?
Calcium.
What does B stand for?
What?
What is B?
B. Oral.
I think you can get the idea there. So did you spot any of the spoken language terms in there? Hesitation, ellipsis, elision, contraction. Certainly, I would hope that you saw the change in conversation. Who's in charge of that conversation, the power position? So at the beginning, the teacher's in charge of the conversation. He takes charge of that conversation because of who he is. I am the teacher and you will answer the questions. Notice that the child is speaking in a very informal way, and notice that she is getting her attention from her friends around her. Okay? Now ask yourself the question, is she unintelligent? How do you know? I would argue that she is very intelligent. She knows the answer to every single one of those questions. He's using those questions not as a way of finding out what she knows, but as a way of punishing that pupil. He is in the power position to be able to ask the questions, but it's actually through questions that Lauren takes the power position from him. She starts asking him questions. Now, what he does that he shouldn't do is he answers the questions. So it's almost like an adjacency pair, a politeness thing. She's asked, so he must answer. In that position, actually, a total silence would have been a lot better, so that he could say the mantra, no emotional response, and take control. I think he'd already had the emotional response at the beginning though, and that's how he lost the control. He wanted to punish that child, and so he started throwing questions out. She got every single one of them right. In this classroom situation, I think that the child is bored. Clearly, she knows all of the answers. Clearly, she's not engaged. And so she takes the power from him through questioning and is looking for the reward of respect from her friends. Now, if you watch that all the way to the end, that comes from, it's just on YouTube. It's the Catherine Tate Show, Science Teacher. And as much as it's comedy, there are things I think that we can learn when we watch these comedies if we understand the spoken language terms that they have within. Some other spoken language terms that I think are interesting, these are Grice's Maxims. And these are things that I always share with the students in the classroom. I say that we always have quality conversations, which means that we always tell the truth. That way, people know that what we're saying is truthful and they can believe in what we say all of the time. So no matter what, in the classroom, we always tell the truth. The next thing is quantity, which is one of the maxims I feel like I'm breaking when I do a webinar, because I am the only person talking right now. But in the classroom, if we talk too much, and that's student or teacher, then we are taking over that conversation. And that's not actually a good quality conversation. Back to that participation pie chart, the quality of the conversation should be that it's equally distributed between everybody. So if you find that you take over conversations and you are always the one talking, maybe think about how you could question the other people so that you stop breaking that maxim of quantity. So quality, always tell the truth. Quantity, how often are we the one talking? The next one is relation. So this works with the students in the classroom because do you know how students ask stupid questions? And they kind of, sometimes they ask questions to throw you off what you're talking about. So when, I don't know, say I've just given a really excellent explanation on Shakespeare and a student puts a hand up and they go, can I go to the toilet? That kind of thing. I might say to that student, relation, and the student understands, because we have this as a protocol for learning in the classroom, that what they've just said has broken the maxim of relation because that's not related to what I was saying. So whatever comes out of my mouth after somebody has spoken to me should be related to what they were just talking about. If they're talking about one thing and I switch and deviate to something else, that shows I'm not listening. It's not a good quality conversation. Of course, when you're talking with your best friends, you know that you can do that. When you're talking with your mother, your father, your brothers, your sisters, you can do that. But when we're trying to have a really good quality conversation, it should be related to what's being said. And manners. Manners are eye contact, back channeling, as we talked about a little bit earlier on. And just in the classroom, for me, manners would also be using a more formal way of speaking. So I would encourage full sentence answers. I would encourage that students attempt to avoid elision, contraction, and I'll show you a nice little game that we use to do that. And this game, it's a training game for fluency, basically. So elision, we talked about. Fillers, we talked about. Hesitation, we talked about. And ellipsis, we talked about. This is the challenge, and I dare you to try this once the webinar is finished. All you need is a timer, and you need 1 or 2 people, and you could do it by yourself, actually. You don't need 2 people. It's good when it's 2 because you can have a competition between each other. And you set a topic, and you must talk for that topic, about that topic for 1 minute. During that minute, every time you use elision, fillers, hesitation, or ellipsis, you get a tally. So the other person's watching out for the fluency of your speech. For each tally, you count up the tallies at the end, and the winner is the one who obviously has the most fluent way of speaking, so avoids using any of these features of normal spoken language. You say, I'm using them now, I'm using fillers. But training for fluency is really good as a teacher because the more fluent, the more confident you seem. So if you find that, I had a young teacher who I was training before, and she used to start every sentence with, okay, right, so, and then, but, and it almost got the students into a frenzy when she said it because they found it quite funny, and it was a nervous thing. So my nervous thing is I'm nervous right now. This is not a usual way for me to be working. And so for me, you might see the fillers creeping in. But training for fluency helps you to remember that when the filler is creeping in, you can pause, as long as it's not a hesitation, an overly long pause. It teaches you to slow down. It teaches you to take control. And it's a great way of reviewing learning as well. So you've just taught a topic. Okay, we're going to train for speaking fluency. And off you go. They can have competitions with each other. The students that I've done this with absolutely love it. My subject is English, but you could do this in science, you could do this in history, you could do this in any subject. Even mathematics, you've just been learning about a particular mathematical topic, you can train for fluency there. Having students who understand how to speak out loud confidently in any subject, I think, is really important. But for you as a teacher, making sure that you are actually confident when you speak in front of students, this can help you to take control of the room. This is just a nice little idea that I like to start lessons with focused talk. So rather than starting the lesson in everybody must sit down, be quiet and allow me to speak, I like to start lessons with the students speaking to each other. So I'm training them in communication. The poster came from a friend of mine, Samantha Bainbridge. She came up with this idea. She used Ian Gilbert's thunks, and at the start of lessons, she used to put a thunk on the board. Now, if you haven't seen Ian Gilbert's thunks, it's a great little book just full of interesting questions that make your mind go gunk, which is a thunk, is the noise that your mind makes. But she was a travelling teacher. And so as she arrived at a classroom, she tended to be later than the students. So as she arrived at a classroom, she would be, flustered. She'd have to get all of her stuff out ready. And this was a real barrier to learning because by the time the lesson started, the students had already started messing about. So using this poster outside of the classroom, the students have to clarify, work out what they're supposed to do. That might be reading the poster, reading the question, reading the task. Get prepared, using whatever they need, including talking to friends, to share their ideas with the class. So the first 5 minutes of a lesson was about them communicating with each other to understand what they were about to do. This is a great way for settling classes because they're already thinking outside of the room where the poster is. As they come in, they've got a clear task to do. You're able to set the lesson up, and then they understand that when you say time to stop, they're going to share the ideas that they've come up with. So it's a nice way for you to communicate clearly. These are the expectations. Read the poster, work out what you're supposed to do, get prepared to share. As you come in, talk about this and make sure that when it's time to start, you're all ready with the answer to the question. Obviously, this takes some training. And the first time that students do this, they might not be talking about the question. You've got to be ready to listen to that. So when they do, I'll stand next to the students who are talking about the question or doing the task. I'll write down every single word that they say. And then I will look over to the students who maybe are talking about what they did at break time or talking about boyfriends and girlfriends. I teach secondary school and I write down every word that they say. Then I stop the class, naming no names, but I say, I love this. I really like how this answer is starting to develop. I'm not so sure about this. And it gets a giggle because I'm reading it word for word. What I'm not doing is I'm not saying, you, stop behaving like that. I expect you to behave in this particular way. I'm not focused on the bad behavior. I'm identifying what I do want and what I don't want. And lesson after lesson, we practice and practice and practice. And eventually, every student knows the protocol for learning is to read the question, discuss the question, and then make sure they're ready with a response to the question. So it's just a nice little idea to get students communicating with each other as well. Okay, I've got a little test for everybody. So I would like you just to read that information. I'll give you a moment. I'm hoping that you're ready for your test. Your test question is, could you please, in your own words, describe Robert? I'm hoping that you didn't know those words that I put in there because that's kind of the point, all right? If we knew that Gasconade was boastful, Glaygit was stupid, idle spectator, that kind of thing, then you might be able to explain Robert in your own words, but I'm hoping that you didn't because the point of this is thinking about the vocabulary that you actually use in the classroom. How do you know that students understand every word that you're saying? Because your communication, if you are making things too difficult, if you are using words in the classroom that they don't understand yet, it may be that poor behaviour comes out because the students are feeling fear of failure because they don't understand. They won't say that out loud. They won't say, excuse me, miss, excuse me, sir, I'm feeling like I'm going to fail this topic, so I am about to be badly behaved. Is that okay? No, they'll just do the bad behaviour. So think really carefully about the language that you do use in the classroom. Think about how you prepare them for what you do. And I am not saying dumb the language down. What I am saying is prepare the students for the more difficult language. Give them spelling tests to take home that also have the keywords and definitions of more difficult language that you might use in your subject. Give them reading material and ask them to use dictionaries to find out the new words so that they're prepared for your lesson. Just be aware of the language that you're using outside in the classroom. Some other thoughts, language that you may want to avoid in the classroom, can't. I have this as a rule in the classroom that the students do not use the word can't. They can use can. I like that one. But I also like more than that, I'm learning to. I will be able to do this. So if I hear a student saying can't, I immediately say, what do you mean? And they say, I'm learning to do this. So think about how they're perceiving themselves, how they're using their language. And if you say something like that in the classroom, remember, you've got to be the example. Oh, I can't do that. That's not my subject. I think that you're setting a bad example. We've got to show them that learning is something that's lifelong and be the example for them. So, you know, show them what you're learning to do, show them how you're developing, but develop in them a growth mindset and communicate really clearly a growth mindset language. Other growth mindset language that you might want to use is thinking about generalizations. So generalizations is chunking information into categories, and I'll give you a much easier example than that. So I can't do maths. Really? 2 + 2. Bet you just did it. You can do maths. Maybe you're learning to do more advanced maths. Maybe you still have some learning to do, but I can't. Can't is what chunks it all together, and it's a barrier. It's stopping. So generalizations, as a rule, don't use them in the classroom. Don't allow the students to use them. Can't, unable, not possible, need, must, have to, go to, necessary, requirement, everybody, nobody, anyone, every, always, never. These generalizations put a barrier on learning if they're using them in the way that chunks information together. So think about that, how you're communicating in the classroom. Do you have a language for learning that all students have bought into, that you use with the students, and that the students are expected to use in their learning? They are in the middle of learning, so they don't already have all of these things. Remember the ladder from the worst to the best? These are the stepping stones to get from where they are to where they need to be. And I think that using the correct language to move learning forward is really important in getting students to understand that this is a journey that they're on. It's not the end product. It's not pass or fail. It's pass or fail at the end, but the journey that we're on really counts. So you can overcome generalizations. If you hear that word can't, what stops you? What if you could? What else do you need? Who says? Nobody is the one person who doesn't. What tells you that? How are you measuring that? Really challenge generalizations in the classroom and get students to see the journey that they're on. Now this is basically my final slide, and final slide before I'm going to give you a little bit of information on up and coming things within Veema. This is the world that we live in, is the Facebook, or it's moved on Instagram. It's the world of making everything look perfect. And as long as it looks perfect on camera, or looks perfect in an observation, or looks perfect just when everybody's looking, that's all that counts. And I think that this is really limiting. I want you to think about, I've talked about, I mean, there's so much more to talk about. This is really, it's a full day of learning that I would like to give to you, and I've condensed it into an hour, so I hope it's been useful. But I want you to think about looking at the true you and daring to look at the true you. There is not a single person on this planet that is perfect, the perfect rounded product. They might look it on the surface. Maybe they've got to a place that's really comfortable and happy for them, but they will have failed many times along the way to get there. Everybody has something that they need to work on. If yours is communication, then dare to look at that. One of the things you could do is observe yourself in the classroom, observe yourself teaching by videoing yourself and daring to look at that tape and thinking about the way that your communication is coming across to the students in your classroom. So for example, if your communication you notice that maybe you have quite a stern face and the students are a little bit afraid, just practicing in the mirror with less stern faces and maybe making sure we build up that relationship. But really daring to look at the true you, and also relationships are key, and communication, effective communication, is key to building those relationships. So that, and I said nobody's perfect. You can see how many things that we had to go through there to get that to the end. I really hope that that was useful to everybody that's listening. If there are any questions that people want to ask, we're not doing live questions. The live questions come with the longer webinars. This is a short taster webinar. The longer webinars, we do a question and answer live session. But here you can still ask questions. But if you could direct those questions to info@veema.co.uk, then those questions will be answered as quickly as possible. Some information for you then. So Veema Education connects educators and classrooms all around the world. We have people listening today from all around the world, and it's wonderful to know that. But also Veema have a newsletter that's going to be out next week. You've got to subscribe to the newsletter to get this, and don't let it sit in your inbox, because inside that newsletter there's lots of freebies, there's lots of ideas, there's lots of articles that have been written by people, or just small ideas for the classroom. It could be on communication. English is an additional language. There's so much in that. So please, if you see the newsletter go into your inbox, or if you've not subscribed yet, get subscribing and have a look at it, please. I know there's a lot of information goes in your inbox, but I promise you this one is good. Okay, this year we have got a really exciting program. I know, because I have had the pleasure of already starting the year delivering many of these programs. So just want to give you an idea of the sort of things that we're offering. Becoming a champion teacher supports teachers at the start of their careers. So this is really for NQTs. It's real practical classroom ideas and lots of things. All of this underpinned by research. But I promise you, on the day, the teachers will have their hands on, lots of questions, lots of discussion, and lots of time to really get themselves ready to be fantastic teachers at the start of their careers. We also have T for Terrific Teaching, which is in this, it's for the more experienced teacher. So it's building on the ideas from becoming an excellent teacher, but it's going into a lot more depth. But again, hands-on, really about differentiation, quality questioning, lots of research. Again, a fantastic day. I have had the best day delivering this just recently, so I can vouch for that. And also lead and learning. This is about developing lead practitioners. This is for people who really are ready to take the next steps in their learning. We have many teams of lead practitioners in many schools being developed right now. You can do this as a one-off day, as you can with many of the other programs. Really, it's all tailored to suit you, to suit your school, to suit your needs and your budget. But this is a fantastic program of getting teachers to really practice in the classroom and develop projects, rather than it being just all about the day and going back to the classroom. It's about projects that are ongoing. It has support all along the way. It's applying practical mentoring strategies that improve staff CPD, lesson observations, learning walks, real hands-on stuff. It is an absolutely fantastic day. So those are all available. And the last thing that I want to point you to is the Research Corner. And this is a handy free library of specially selected, regular, updated articles and research for teaching staff. This is available all of the time at veema.co.uk/research corner, updated regularly, and it's worth a visit, once a month, once a week, whatever you've got the time for. But all of that's there. As I say, there are many things out there that we're doing, that we're working on, and I really hope that you will all be part of that. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for listening, and I hope to be answering some questions soon and maybe see you in your schools soon. Thank you very much.